Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with Frank Rausen Pereira. And since you're here, I would like to thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, hit the bell icon and then all notifications. Do follow our social media handles for all the latest information that we have as far as Bharata First is concerned. We are also coming out with our newsletter with incisive content. You can subscribe to that as well. The Bharata First team is running a daily quiz. The winner will get a chance to interview me in a program called Hot Seat. All the details are in the description of this video. There is also a contribution link for those who would like to come forward and contribute and keep this content alive. Remember, small steps are all that it takes right now to support Bharata First. So continue to show your love and support like you always have done. Getting on to the discussion now, the US Navy carried out a freedom of navigation operation in the Indian waters near Lakshadweep Islands last week without New Delhi's prior consent to challenge India's excessive maritime claims, according to an official statement. A statement issued by the commander of the US 7th Fleet said that the operation was conducted by guided missile destroyer USS John Paul Jones on April 7th. India requires prior consent for military exercises or maneuvers in its exclusive economic zone or continental shelf, a claim the statement said was inconsistent with international law. Reacting to the development, of course, the Ministry of External Affairs adhered to the government's stand on not allowing military exercises in its exclusive economic zone without consent and said that it has conveyed its concerns to the US government through diplomatic channels. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the freedom of navigation issue between India and the United States. Joining me on the program today are Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador, Shakti Sinha, Director, Delhi School of Public Policy and Governance, and Commander Milind Kulshreshtha, retired strategic analyst. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Ambassador, let me start the program with you first. You know, this issue has been in the news for the entire week. There are some commentators who are concerned with what has happened and have called it, the starting point of many more troubles to come between India and the United States. How would you look at this issue?
Greetings, Frank, and nice to be on the show with you. First thing that we need to understand is that the US administration or government is not monolithical. Different people, different segments have different viewpoints. That Navy has a certain viewpoint does not necessarily mean that that is the viewpoint of the White House or that is the viewpoint of the State Department. That said, it's very interesting. US is not a signatory to the UNCLOS, and yet they have decided that they are the implementers and they are the torchbearers. Now, there is, to be honest, there is ambiguity about the UNCLOS rule about the right of innocent passage and freedom of navigation. The section of the experts believe that the right is almost unfettered, and so much so that you can go even through the territorial waters. Some believe that even in the exclusive economic zone, you need to inform the state concerned. Different countries are following different practices. India has this policy, which it would appear has not been respected or has been ignored by the US for quite some time. I was going through the background and I came across the fact that that since 2007, it has been a regular practice for the US Navy to pass through the territorial waters of India, or sorry, the exclusive EEZ without informing us. So the question really is, why have they chosen to go public now and go vocal? Apparently, even for with their allies, Japan and South Korea, they have issued similar notes in the past. So that is where it is. I will not read too much into it. I think that we, among even the best of friends, there are differences of opinion, and we have taken note of that. We are taking it up through diplomatic channels, but that appears to be the policy of the U.S. government. And as I said, there is not one policy on that among the Committee of Nations. Frank?
Absolutely. Mr. Sinha, let me bring you in now. The Chinese media seems to be very happy with this development. If you read some of the information coming out of there, they seem to be taking jibes at us through their editorials. So the language also has been questioned by several commentators as well. The similar kind of language was not used with Japan, is what some of them are suggesting. How would you look at these developments?
Thank you, Frank, for the question. And taking off from what Ambassador Prakash was saying, uh, USA does this regularly. It's not that it's a new action. It does this against Japan, Australia, which has treaty allies, in fact, Philippines. The fact is that UNCLOS is very, very specific. Territorial waters is only 12 nautical miles. Everything else is not there. Contiguous and then EEZ. Now, for China to be enjoying it, Weibo seems to have a good time yesterday and day before on it. It's fine. China, despite being a full participant of UNCLOS, is possibly the biggest violator of the United Nations Convention Law of the Seas. The USA is actually a signatory, but it has not ratified it yet. It is held up in the Senate. USA actually complies with UNCLOS completely. What USA has allowed some Chinese to do simply is that instead of mentioning it in end of the year report to the Senate, which they give every year, where they list. And I think in 20 years, they have been in our exclusive economic zone 16 times, 1/6. They have listed it. This time they issued a press note. They have done that occasionally. So I think, as Ambassador was right, the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. So this Chinese jibe should not really bother us for the fact that technically the USA is right. UNCLOS is 1982. The Indian Act Maritime Zone Act is 1976 Act. If your act is inconsistent with UNCLOS, you should amend your act and not the other way around. UNCLOS won't be amended for you. So I think that the Chinese can enjoy themselves, but at the end of the day, they are the biggest violators of UNCLOS by far.
Absolutely. So, Miriam Kulshresh, let me bring you into the picture now. How would you look at this from a strategic point of view, from an ex-Navy man? What is it that is of concern to you? Let's also talk about what do the rules suggest as far as freedom of navigation is concerned.
Yeah, good morning, Frank. As other panelists have already brought out, the rule is very clear, as agreed upon by the like-minded nations, that we agree upon this particular way of treating a EEZ. Right? Now, the interpretation of the rule, what is the law, is a question of debate, which we can keep going into. But the point is that we have a EEZ, which we have declared on the maps. When I say on the maps, it is in the official map that we claim this to be our EEZ as a protocol, as a courtesy protocol also, that we expected that this should have been announced to us that US warship is going to be closing by our Lakshadweep detachment. By the way, it's not that the island is not protected. India has a lot of thousands of islands around. So we are talking about whether was there a risk to this kind of a formation which happened by the US ship? No, not at all. What is of concern, if you see from military point of view, is that were we able to detect in time? Was our surveillance good enough? Having said that, coming to the second option, what the US has also recently done in February, USS McCain, it did violate the Perissi Island thing, saying that I don't agree with whatever is the rule which has been set by China, Vietnam, and Taiwan. So he says you know I'm not favoring anybody, but this is the rule which I feel should be part of the Indo-Pacific, and he wants to stake the claim to his part of the rule. That is how I see from the naval perspective. Whether we keep reporting it or we are at risk is something which we can evaluate as we go in the discussion.
No, since we are here, then one quick follow-up question, Milind, as far as the risk factors that you just raised, are you happy with the way we reacted? Are you happy with how we responded in terms of the security aspect of it? Were we alert in time? What more needs to be done?
Yeah, this is actually one of the main points if you see from the naval angle. The example which I will brought out, or I have already brought out, is let's say it was a Chinese ship. Why China or any of our hostile neighbors would like to be in EEZ zone is because they would like to monitor what is happening, what is the traffic, and more important, whenever the submarine operations happen, we would like to know the salinity, temperature, how the waves are breaking. There are hundreds of calculations which go into it and which are very important for any anti-submarine warfare or any submarine operation for intelligence gathering. So we cannot allow people to get into our EEZ as and when they want, to the purpose they want to. So it is not a good sign. Maybe Navy has detected, but as you are aware, a lot of things are not declared in public. So we do have a surveillance. It's not that we don't know the importance of Lakshadweep Islands, Minicoy, Kavarati. We have a lot of radars which have been fitted. It comes in the Persian Gulf route for India. So whether Navy came to know or was told later is something which we can leave it for Navy to decide. But the fact is, we are not happy that anybody enters our EEZ, and we would like to protect and challenge that person, be it American Navy. American Navy is very strong in this part of the world. We can detail out the technical part, how strong they are as we go forward.
Absolutely. We'll come to that a little later on in the program. So, Ambassador, let me bring you in now. There's so much of noise about Quad. There is so many waves. So let's talk about, since the commander brought up waves, let's talk about, there are many waves that Quad is creating and ruffling several feathers as well. Is this something that could come up in the Quad and something that could be a thorn in the flesh as far as Quad is concerned?
Well, I don't think so. I think this is not a matter for Quad. This is a matter for quiet discussions among friendly countries like US, India, Japan, Australia, South Korea, and I'm sure must have been discussed. It's a question of interpretation. We have a certain viewpoint, the US has a certain viewpoint. Now, to say that just because we are friends and because we are strategic partners and we are the major defense partners, the US should toe India's line or India should toe US line, I think is a bit excessive. We tend to react very strongly, and especially our social media heroes go guns blazing. But well, that's the nature of the beast. Uh, I do agree that to highlight it at this juncture, when there are sensitivities in terms of what is happening in Ladakh, etc., was unnecessary. It could have been done through diplomatic channels. But well, then the US is US. I mean, if a couple of years ago there was a report that they were spying on Angela Merkel. I mean, does Angela Merkel love it? No. Does she lose sleep over it? No. I mean, they did the protest, they did. So I think we also should start behaving like a big power. Now, the US and India are collaborating closely. Since 1992, we have had the Malabar exercises. With no other group of countries, we have had so many exercises as the Americans do. We have the broadest uh, co- the scope of cooperation and exchanges is the broadest. So that is where we are. Look at the balance sheet. I'm not saying that they are doing the right thing. All I'm saying is that there is scope for different viewpoints and that we should not overreact. I mean, this is something to be sorted out in a friendly manner. We may not still agree because we may have one viewpoint and they would have theirs. But that's how things are done. We could agree to disagree and continue cooperating because that cooperation is something that is beneficial for both countries.
So since we are here, Mr. Sinha, let's also talk about this other aspect. Do you believe that we need to have a little bit of excitement in the relationship as well, because you can't have it all plain, and we can just dismiss this as, a little storm in the teacup, and then considering that we have so many areas of cooperation, that this will just go by.
Frank, that question reminds me of an analogy. About 3 years ago, the Pakistanis military had organized exercises with the Russians and Chinese. Where was the exercise? In the then Pak-occupied Kashmir, now Pak-occupied Ladakh. Russian troops are exercising with Pakistanis and Chinese on Indian territory, as defined by the Constitution of India. Was there any outrage in Delhi? Anywhere else among our country community? None. If you remember the case of the Italian Marines, the issue was whether the shooting of the fishermen took place in Indian territory, defined by 12 nautical miles. Answer is yes or no. This was 200 kilometers west of Lakshadweep, not Indian territory. EEZ is an economic concept, it is not a territorial concept. You have the Russian foreign minister coming to Delhi. In the presence of the Indian foreign minister, says our relationship with China is at its best ever, at a time when India-China relationship are at their worst possibly. We took it in our stride. So why this little thing is getting us so excited? Yes, the USA did it badly. There is no two opinions about it. But if you look at the larger context, I think it's a very, very minor thing. I mean, I don't need to get outraged. There's so much more we have to work together critically. And this is why the Chinese want to have fun, is the fact that this actually can be used and is used against China by the US and now others also in the freedom of navigation of FNOPS. We have to accept these things. So I think we should be a little more mature in our response. Tell the Americans that, yeah, we are friends. And here I would like to add something which Milind has started. We have this, after the Bombay attacks, set up this massive marine domain awareness exercises, very expensive. We set up this fusion, now called Fusion Center, fortunately. Earlier it had a very tongue-twisting acronym, 4IC, whatever. This Fusion Information Center at Gurgaon has watches the entire Indian Ocean, the northern part of it, has representatives from the United States and Australia and I think France in it. So it's not that we are unaware of what's happening in our waters. So clearly, as I said, the US Navy need not have issued the press note. Having issued the press note, I mean, we should take it in our stride as a much smaller offense than what others, our friends, have done to us in the past.
So, Milind, coming back to you now, let me go back to a point that you were making earlier. Let's not forget, clearly there is a lot happening, in the high seas. Everyone is focusing on their navies, and it looks like, the next big thing is likely to happen in the high seas itself. So, from that perspective, what should we do? What should we focus on? You are talking about the strength of the US Navy. Of course, it's going to take a long time before we get there. But what do we need to do in the immediate near future to try and secure our own interests, especially in the Indian Ocean?
Yeah, that's a good question because we need to see two aspects. First is our participation with the international community through the naval diplomacy. And secondly is to protect our own EEZ. Both these aspects go hand in hand. So coming to our operation, let's say with the quad navies. Now, when we operate with the quad navies and if we are required to enter somebody's zone, what is our definition of EEZ as Government of India? Would we be participating with US warships? Let's say one day we have to go into the South China Sea. Though we are presently getting together as an armada in Bay of Bengal or the west side of our coast. So we have to come out very clear with our perception and refuse our participation if it is not matching our principles and the guidelines which government has set, so that Navy does not get into a two-way process where it is supposed to participate, but there's no clarity. So having this clarity. Secondly, when we come to participation, EU version, European Union version is also coming into Indo-Pacific through France. Earlier we had UK, which used to speak for us in the EU. That was our rule. But now with the Brexit, we have France, which is coming out. France has a lot of interest in this area. It has about 1 million people staying in Indo-Pacific, and it's actively involved. Our participation as a bilateral, trilateral, or as a quad or quad plus is something which is the future in this side of the world. Indo-Pacific is now the new center of gravity. About 60% plus GDP of the world or the globe comes from this area, and everybody's interest is over here. China, I can say, is the point, which is the, I cannot say target, but that is the botheration which even EU has got. Now, coming to our relationship with US, we have a bigger problem. If I can take up the topic over here, our CATSA threat, which is hanging on us in case we go for S-400, going by technical parameters and what we have got and what I'm aware about the air warfare, I think we require the S-400. So if US keeps breaching or transgressing into our EEZ, it becomes a problem, and it's a something which a government wouldn't like to do. So we have to have a clarity on protection of our EEZ, definition of our EEZ, and how we are going to handle so many other issues, serious issues like S-400, which we have worked with Russia. Russia is our, it's there in our DNA of armed forces. So we have a complex situation over here.
All right, then it's time to get quick closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward. And since we are here, we also need to focus on what we need to do in the immediate near future as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned too, because that is of a high priority for India. Ambassador, starting with you first.
Well, we have been I don't like the word sea blind, but we have been sea lethargic in a way that we have not paid due attention hitherto to the maritime threats that we face, being a continental power. But I'm happy that we are now very conscious of the threat perception from the maritime area. And so one certainly is that we have to keep on strengthening our defenses, our navy, and that is going to be a difficult task because in history, no other navy has grown so fast as the Chinese navy. And in about 5 to 7 years, it is believed that they will acquire blue water capabilities. So that is certainly one of the things that has to be done. The second is to build synergies that we are building through joint exercises, through Quad, through other mechanisms. And believe you me, there are going to be niggles. There are going to be niggles. Nothing is going to be issue free, but that is very natural. And we have to learn to live with that. We have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that this cooperation, this collaboration is very good for us, very good for the peace and security in the region and beyond. So that is how it is. We need to build synergies and to send a message that Quad and cooperation amongst right-minded countries is gaining strength, and that is the only way forward in my view.
Mr. Sinha.
Absolutely. India has to build synergies because the area is simply too large for us to do it on our own. With countries like-minded, we have the Quad Plus now. France is a very active member of it. Possibly there are others also who can somehow be co-opted at later stages, depending on the geometry of the period required. But we also need to get our lines of communications clear, our operating procedures, SOP is very clear, so that unnecessary niggles, we'll always have niggles, yes, but don't create niggles where there are none. There are enough things to sort out to improve working relationship much better. Concentrate on the doables, concentrate on where we agree upon, widen them further, so that we can move ahead and ensure a rule-based international order, particularly on the high seas, where otherwise countries which are small will get naturally disadvantaged and might become slight. That is not something that India can be a party to it. So therefore, we'll have to shrug off things like this. But yes, work with our partners in ensuring more standardized SOPs, which all of us understand, and then so that we can then project a unified picture rather than five unified pictures coming and creating dysfunction. It's better to have one unified picture. To quote you, the big picture out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sinha. And finally, Milind, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
So coming to the naval front of this exercise, definitely we require more surveillance, and I would be recommending that we go into more of a space-based surveillance. There are a lot of accurate and fantastic solutions which are available. We have privatization of space which has taken place in India. For non-sensitive areas, we can allow them to do it for us, Indian companies, using Indian satellites to do the processing. But coming to a very different topic, like what happens is when we start working on the tactics. So let me take an example of anti-submarine warfare. Presently, we are doing that with our own ships. So when we become a part and interoperability, Comcasa, Limoa, there are many aspects which are there. So we need to integrate. We are still not there. It'll take years for us to become partners in actual search of a submarine. When we do the submarine operation, we have many ships which participate, be it sonars are put, dunking sonars are put, towed array sonars are put. So we need to start building on that. NATO has a process in place. There's a SOP, which is very much defined what a ship is supposed to do. I think we should start focusing on building operational tactics along with these navies to really leverage the advantage. And coming to our own position, I think government has to give clear directive to naval ships which are going to participate that what are the do's and don'ts so that we don't have any diplomatic problems later. With that, I think Navy requires to have more surveillance in that area, especially with the Chinese threat lurking around in this. I think that is how I can summarize. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that what the US did was wrong, but the problem also stems from the fact that freedom of navigation is looked at differently by different countries. India has taken up the issue with Washington diplomatically, and that is the right thing to do. This must not be blown out of proportion as India and the US are coordinating on several fronts, and this should not come in the way of the big picture. We need to continue to build synergies and ensure that our larger interests are protected. We also need to have clear do's and don'ts for ships entering our exclusive economic zones, and it needs to be clearly communicated so that we don't see this happening again. Once again, thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. Do follow our social media handles for all the latest updates, and you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter. The Bharata First team is running a daily quiz. The winner will get to interview me in a program called Hot Seat. The details are all in the description of this particular video, so kindly go through them. There is also a contribution link for those who would like to come forward and keep this content alive. Remember, Bharata First is not my platform, it is our platform, and together we need to nurture it. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.